Floyd Street's finest. He's Coach Mark Lieberman. I'm Jack Grossman. Thanks so much for tuning in. Got a lot to talk about today. Obviously, talking everything Louisville basketball. The Cards drop a game to Chattanooga. We're going to get into that. The Empire Classic is coming up this weekend. Something that's going to be a little interesting, I think, for Louisville. We'll get into that as well. Obviously, they do play Coppin State on Wednesday, who is one of the worst teams in Division I, according to KenPom. And you can't really take anything for granted for Louisville at this point, but that's a conversation up within itself, that game with Coppin State. But Coach, Louisville loses to Chattanooga Friday night in a game that really wasn't very competitive. Let's be honest. I mean, Chattanooga pushed that lead out in the second half, and Louisville made a run, got within 7 at one point late. But it was all kind of just window dressing on kind of what happened in that game. Louisville, I'll put it this way. To me, it looked like a typical early season scrappy, well, not scrappy is probably not the best way to put it, but just mid-major versus high-major team, to where the mid-major team just hangs around most of the game, and then the high-major team wakes up and pulls away early in the second half, except the roles were reversed. Usually Louisville would be the team that's the high-major team pulling away. Chattanooga looked like the better team pretty much all game. And that's pretty disturbing for Louisville fans. I don't know how surprising it is at this stage, but I want to get into some of the things that happened, especially, the three-point defense, turnovers, all that stuff. But just what were your thoughts just watching Louisville and Chattanooga, and really Chattanooga just kind of taking Louisville and getting whatever they wanted offensively against that team?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that you talked about them just being the high major and turning on so far, and through their exhibition games and their first 2 regular season games, they don't look like a team that knows who they are. Chattanooga comes in, they know that they want to spread the floor. They're going to run zoom action and handoffs and spread you out and get out in transition. And they did that. And Louisville didn't take any of that stuff away. And then offensively, until when they realized, look, we're down 18, 20 points, they started to attack the rim. And, that's when teams, that can kind of be like fool's gold at times, because, guys can put up stats late in games and get fouled because teams are just kind of coasting when they get big leads, like Chattanooga had in the second half of 20.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where you look at it, Chattanooga, they said this at the top of the TV broadcast. They made more threes per game than any other team in Division I last year, 11.8 threes per game. Even with all the new guys they brought in, you knew they want to shoot the 3 ball. That's how they're going to stay in the game. That's how they're going to win games. That's how they're going to be competitive. And I don't think there was really much of a sense of urgency from Louisville of, okay, we got to get out, defend the 3, take away the 3 ball. They used that zoom action, get in the lane. Louisville over collapsed, left guys wide open. And to me, it was, I'll put it this way. The defining moment of that game for me was Chattanooga hits 8 threes in the first half. You knew the game plan had to be take away the 3-point shot based off of everything we knew about Chattanooga. You would think at halftime, Kenny Payne would be emphasizing, don't give up open threes, don't give up open threes, don't give up open threes. The first possession out of halftime, what do? They give up a wide open 3-point bucket. To me, that's kind of all you need to see from this Louisville team at this point. The number one thing on the scouting.
Yeah. No, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I'll say the number one thing on the scouting board for that game was you can't let them shoot the 3. And Louisville either didn't have that scouting report or didn't follow that scouting report. And either way you look at it, it's really, really bad looking at that. Just how easy Chattanooga was able to shoot the 3 ball within its offense, and how many good, easy, comfortable looks they were able to get.
Well, they got a bunch in transition. They got some off second shots. And basically, if your defensive foundation isn't sound, so some of those zooms, which are basically just dribble handoffs, guys were hung up on screens. There was pick and pop opportunities. Guys were not alert. Off the ball is what makes you great defensively. And bad things happen when the ball's in flight if you're not in prepared and understanding what teams are trying to do. So there were times that were late. They were setting some flares, but guys were coming off actions. They were getting open in transition, second shots. So it's not so much the mindset of, okay, well, we got to guard the three. It's you got to do your stuff early. You got to be sound defensively. You have to have a base defense to understand, okay, if teams are going to make tough contested shots, that's one thing. But when you're allowing teams to get into their offense so easily and create open shots, that's a whole different ballgame.
Right. That's the thing. It's not always just, one pass and just someone's not playing denial defense. You give up a wide open wing three. It's the result of everything else going wrong that leads to the wide open three. Two of them early in the game. I mean, we can talk about now with the rebounding. I thought Brandon Huntley-Hatfield was actually really aggressive on the glass. He had 14 rebounds. He was, the only big man I felt like on Louisville's roster that kind of had that sense of urgency of, okay, we got to clean up possession. We got to get to the board. Louisville's guards, I mean, Mike James and Trey White didn't do a bad job on the glass either. But you look at the rest of Louisville's front line, other than Huntley-Hatfield. The rest of Louisville's front line had 8 total rebounds. And 4 of them came from Emmanuel Okorafor, who only played 6 minutes in the game. I mean, you look at J.J. Traynor, 1 rebound, 20 minutes. Dennis Evans, 3 rebounds, 15 minutes. Those are 2 guys that you need to be able to crash the glass. I get they're not your stereotypical big men. They're not exactly the strongest players. But if you're going to play those 2 guys big minutes, you're going to need to rebound the ball better. And you look at when Huntley-Hatfield came off the floor early in the first half, where Chattanooga kind of established itself, they brought in Okorafor and J.J. Traynor. They had 2 different possessions in the first 2-3 minutes that both those guys were in, where Chattanooga got multiple offensive rebounds and hit open threes off of those offensive rebounds. To where it's almost like one problem, they complement each other in a bad way. The turnovers as well. You talk about them giving up threes in transition. Louisville, 15, 16 turnovers again. Can't take care of the ball. To where you look at the end result of the 3-point basket really killing them. And it's all the other issues that are leading to the big issue that really cost him the game, I feel like.
Well, I think what the type of shots that Chattanooga was taking, that really is a part of the guard's job as well. And if you know this, just from a technical standpoint, on all those attempts, and I've mentioned this before, Louisville was taking a step in. Anytime there's a 3-point shot, you got to take a step back towards your guy to try and hit him, because long shots, long rebounds. So those were opportunities for guards to clean them up. Some of the baskets that were inside that were missed, Hatfield was able to get a few of those. But, and rebounding out of your area for guys like JJ and Okorafor, that's important. But those are opportunities for guards to really establish themselves. If you watch it, they're not hitting bodies. So a lot of those plays, blaming, all the bigs, that's one thing. But the guards aren't hitting either, so guys are stepping in. There's a couple times the bigs didn't hit, and those balls get tipped. And if you don't come up with those opportunities, and another great point about rebounding the basketball for guards, you initiate the break right away. If a Trey White, if a Mike James, if a Sky Clark rebounds, they can just get out and go. You don't have to worry about an outlet. You don't have to worry about just shaving off 0.8 seconds off the clock. You can get it and establish your transition game. But rebounding, as Pat Riley says, no rebounds, no rings. If you can't rebound the basketball and you give second chance opportunities, this is Chattanooga and UMBC. When they start, as you mentioned earlier, and they start playing teams like Texas and Indiana or Connecticut, I mean, it's a different thing.
Yeah, which I got some thoughts on a Louisville Indiana matchup. I'll give you at the end of this podcast, because just quick note, Indiana does not look good either. They have a lot of the same problems Louisville has. I'll get to that at the back end of the podcast here, a potential Louisville Indiana matchup. But you look at the rebounding, be like Trey White and Mike James did combine for 11 rebounds, but they could have done more. And that's something you talked about a couple weeks ago. Like that was about 2 weeks ago. You mentioned that after the Kentucky Wesleyan game of Louisville taking the step in instead of the step back on long rebounds. You've had 2 weeks to work on that. And again, it goes back to you haven't been able to improve and make adjustments to what's going wrong. In this case, it's you got to be more aware. If you take a long shot, it's going to be a longer rebound. And you talk about, getting out in transition. That would be very helpful for a Louisville team that struggles on the offensive end to be able to, score points and get easy buckets. So with the struggles they've had, and when they made that run late in the game, when it was kind of decided, that fool's gold run, kind of like you called it, it was them forcing turnovers, pressing, and getting into transition. I don't think it's, a very long-term solution to go back and try to play like the Rick Pitino, Denny Crum style pressing it for 40 minutes a game.
Well, they haven't, right. They haven't worked on
Right.
it. That's not their philosophy. So that's not something that look, and against better guards,
That's
they
not
can
going
carve
to
you
work.
up with certain things. Right. You're going to go against, ACC teams. You're not going to be able to do that unless you've been doing it since the summer and that's your identity. When you talked about the rebounds for Trey White and Mike James, some of those things, though, critical rebounds is a category that I chart as well. And those are plays that are important depending on time and score and plus and minus and so on. And look, I'd love to see this team have a big run to the rim. I'd love to see this team have a big, as a trailer, set a random ball screen or go set a wide pin down to get different actions to create driving lanes for these guards. That's just again, part of the issue that this team is struggling with, finding who they are and finding that identity offensively and defensively.
Right. That's something we talked about a lot last week because, I'll be fully transparent. And we obviously hit on it on last week's podcast, but there were, they won the game over UMBC. There were obviously things, especially on the defensive end, that were like, okay, that doesn't look good. On the offensive end, yes, they were able to get to the paint at will, but the question was, could they do that against better competition? And yes, we thought about Chattanooga as that as well. But, once you get to the Texases and the Kentuckys and ACC play to where, can you just get to the bucket whenever you want? And we saw that against Chattanooga. No, they couldn't. They still, had some success getting the paint, but they weren't able to where you look at it and look, there's sometimes where I feel like, and this is kind of what I thought about the UMBC game. There were things wrong. There were things that weren't great, but at the end of the day, they won the game and they went 4-28 last year to where you kind of like, you put it in the back of your head and say, okay, these are very big issues. But at the end of the day, they sometimes, from our point of view, out to the coaching staff and the players have to view it differently. It's, they won a game. You got to give them credit for winning a game when they'd been through kind of what Louisville had been through. However, you can't follow that up with playing a better team, still a mid-major team, but a better team in Chattanooga, and not improve on any of the things that you saw against UMBC or against Kentucky Wesleyan. And on top of that, not be able to score the ball as efficiently just because you can't get to the rim whenever you want to against actual competition. And
that's the thing. Like for example, UMBC was pushing up, not switching on ball screens. It was just an open lane almost every single time for Mike James, for Sky Clark, for Tyler Johnson. What Chattanooga was doing was going under ball screens, was corralling them and making guys have to shoot jump shots. They were almost daring them to shoot them. They were not letting them getting paint touches or drives to the lane, because obviously they saw the UMBC game and they're saying, okay, well, and you saw that early on, guys were settling for jump shots. Now, if you could consistently make that, that's one thing, and that's something to understand. That every game, everybody's going to scout you differently. And so for the Chattanooga game, it was they were dropping, they were corralling, they were going under ball screens, they were not letting guys get into the lane, and that's what you saw early on and throughout the second half as well.
Yeah, and I think it becomes a very easy thing now for, even like Coppin State to look at, for Texas to look at, for, probably Indiana to look at on Monday, to where you can say, okay, you need to make them beat you with the jump shot before you adjust to that. You go under the ball screens. It's a very, you play drop coverage out of the ball screens. You take away, the easy alley-oop to a Dennis Evans or a Trainer or something like that. And you say, can the guards hit jump shots after a ball screen? And that, to me, is a big question for Louisville right now, because I don't really think we've seen them be able to prove that to this point, whether it be a three-point jump shot or you get into that, 10, 12, 15-foot range where you can kind of, hit a mid-range jumper, hit a little floater. Like, that's what you have to do against drop coverage or when you go under screens. You got to be able to hit jump shots. And I think, Chattanooga got to expose that, to your point, Louisville, a little bit on that. But, I think, like, honestly, if you can't beat Coppin State, you kind of set everything else aside and say, okay, it's probably curtains on the season. If you don't beat Coppin State, I mean, I don't want to exaggerate too much here, because look, it's been 4 games counting exhibitions, 2 regular season games, very, very, very long season. And I don't want to be, hot take overreact guy. But following 4-28 last year, following the Wesleyan Chattanooga losses, and knowing the schedule Louisville has coming up with, Texas, then likely Indiana, and then the ACC and Kentucky, which the ACC, looks better this year than it has the last couple of years. I still think there's, issues beyond the top 2-3 of, I think, Duke, despite losing to Arizona, which that was a phenomenal game. I don't know if you caught any of that on Friday.
I caught a little bit, not as much as I wanted to.
Yeah, it was great to watch Arizona. It was great counter punch game. Keyshawn Johnson was great for Arizona. Omar Ballo was great. But Larson was in foul trouble, and they still found ways to win. I think Arizona was really, really legit in that game, which was fun. But Duke's obviously still going to be there. They got a lot of talent. Miami blasted UCF over the weekend. I think they're going to be really good again. Luka Poplar is a guy that's really starting to ascend like people thought he might. Virginia got a good win over Florida, to where I think those 3 teams you feel pretty good about. Beyond that, I think there's still a lot of question marks in the league, but I think the league is in a better place than what it's been the last couple of years, to where it's. And Louisville struggled mightily in it anyways, to where if Louisville still got on that same pace they've been the last couple of years, it could be a very long trip in the ACC, to where you got to get wins. Like, you just have to find places to get wins. And New Mexico State, the back half of Thanksgiving weekend, that's a program that hasn't, been able, or that folded pretty much for pretty scandalous reasons back in February, came back. So they're, behind the 8-ball there, and Coppin State on Wednesday night. Those are kind of the 2 games you look at and say, okay, you need to win these 2 games to have a chance to salvage anything out of this, because you're running out of games now, to where, you got to win these non-conference, quote unquote, cupcake games. Because I don't count Bellarmine.
Yeah, look.
Yeah.
Right.
I'll go ahead, Coach. Yeah,
look,
sorry, I've been ranting.
Yeah, look, no, it's okay. That's hey, it's your show. With Coppin State, they're not a very good team. I think Louisville will win, but you got to see strides. You got to see improvement. You got to see certain things.
What certain things do you need to see from them? In the Coppin State
overall,
game?
There's just, I'd love to see a defensive, like, that they're consistently defending things a certain way, and how you're guarding ball screens, because they struggled again with getting, and Mike James, and I'm impressed with him on the offensive end. Defensively, he's getting taken down on screens. He's crumbling on screens at times. These guys have to have a mindset to dodge and defeat screens, not to let teams just get what they want. The ball pressure's got to improve. All those things to me on the defensive end are paramount if this team wants to have a chance to have, a winning record, even get to a point where they can, win some ACC games. They're going to have to really grind it out on the defensive end. And I haven't seen that in the 2 exhibitions and 2 regular season games. And that's concerning as far as, okay, is that going to happen? Because, look, they can just show up against Coppin State and they can win that game by 10, 15 points with not showing improvement. And that, again, can be misleading. Then you go into, 3 or 4 days later, Sunday, and you're playing Texas.
Yeah, you look at it, I think I agree with you. It starts on the defensive end, because for a team that's offensively challenged, which Louisville is, you got to be able to defend to keep yourself in games. And I think you look at it and you say, can they, figure out, I said, a defensive game, but even on the offensive side, I just want them to look like they look confident in what they're doing and they know what they're doing. Like there was a possession in the Chattanooga game where there was about 8 minutes, 15 seconds left in the game. They're down 18. Like, at that point, it's like, okay, you need to get something going now to have any chance to do anything. And the entire possession was, they were in a 1-4 low look, which, for those who don't know, you had Tyler Johnson dribbling the ball. Then you had 4 guys basically across the baseline, 2 on the corners and 2 on the blocks, to where, you can either come up, set a high ball screen, you can get some action off it. It's a fairly common look. But you had a 1-4 low look, and you just kind of sat there for 13, 14 seconds, and Kenny Payne's on the bench kind of flailing his arms, trying to, yell him to get into something, but they don't look like they know what to get into. Finally, with 12 seconds left in the shot clock, Trey White comes up. They basically do a simple give and go, and Johnson, launches a contested three that he doesn't make, because that's not good offense. That's not a good shot. And Kenny Payne literally just kind of throws his arms down and basically like, okay, I give up. Almost the time. Obviously, he's not giving up, but it was just, to me, that's kind of a microcosm of Louisville on both sides of the ball right now. They're just indecisive.
Yeah.
They don't know who they are. They don't know what to do. And that's a second year in a row of this for Kenny Payne right now.
Mm-hmm. And, to your point, your offense has to help your defense. You have to get good shots. You have to get to the free throw line within the flow of the offense. I'm doing some clips later today. It's just guys aren't doing stuff. They're not sprinting the screens. They're basically running through plays instead of reading. There's a few opportunities that screen. Guys aren't looking at. They're just kind of being robotic and running through their stuff. And unless you're going to get action off high ball screens, which they did against UMBC, with Sky Clark, because UMBC was just, let's just say it, awful defensively. I mean, they're not going to get those looks unless they have really good flow and movement and the ball doesn't stick and they know what they're trying to get out of a certain thing. Because right now it's coming down to like mid post, like they're getting some ISOs in the mid post with a Trey White, with JJ, with Hatfield. He got the charge to start. And those guys aren't getting deep post position. I'd like to see them get both feet in the paint. So there's just a myriad of things I think that could really help this team offensively.
As you guys know by now, we've partnered with BetMGM Sportsbook for this college basketball season. We're going to be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks and predictions throughout the college basketball season. And we are going to have special offers for you, the listeners and the viewers on the Field of 68 each and every week during the season. If you haven't signed up with BetMGM yet, use the bonus code FIELD1500 and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager on BetMGM Sportsbook. Here's what you got to do. Download the BetMGM app. Sign up using the bonus code FIELD1500. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if that bet loses. Just make sure you use the bonus code FIELD1500 when you sign up. And remember, BetMGM is now available under one wallet in select states. As a New Jersey resident, this is super convenient for me when I have to go cover games in New York or Philly. When crossing state borders, just log into your existing account instead of having to create new accounts in each state that you go to. And most importantly, I got to let you know, we do have some fun stuff coming up for this college basketball season. Bet insurance tokens, college hoops odds boosts, my personal favorite, parlay odds boosts. So download the BetMGM app today.
Before we get out of here, I do want to make sure we talk about the Empire Classic, because this will be the last chance we get to really talk about it before they actually play the games. I know you're going to be in New York for the radio calls, correct? Over on 93.9.
It's 50-50 right
50-50?
now. I should know if I'm going. If not, I'll be home watching it. But originally I was supposed to go, and so anyway,
fair.
We're still working on those details, so we'll see.
That's fair. Well, I hope you do get to go. You get the New York trip and see some good games there, but
and get a slice of pizza.
Oh,
so,
absolutely. Yeah. Katz's Deli, Katz's Delicatessen. Also, if you've ever been,
come on, man, come on.
I
Who do you think you're talking to?
What,
Jack? Jeez, come on, Jack. You should.
That's quickly. Corned beef or pastrami. And then what do you prefer? And then best slice of pizza in New York.
Well, there's a bunch. Look, you can find pizza at any, every place says the world's best pizza, but look, I have a couple spots that I can go to that I know right near the Garden that have some really good pizza. And then look, I'm a hot pastrami guy. Not a big fan of rye, so I might have it on some get some Dijon mustard, some deli mustard, maybe on some challah bread. I mean, you can't.
Challah is the acceptable substitute.
Yeah.
I feel like so. My mom actually got threatened to get kicked out of a New York deli one time because she tried to put ketchup on corned beef.
Real well, that's
a no-no
for dismissal.
It absolutely is. But we got to get you down here in Atlanta. There's a deli called Reuben's downtown that has it's not as good as like a Katz's or like a Carnegie up there, but it's like as good as anything else I've had, where they have really, really good hot pastrami that you would love.
Okay.
Phenomenal pastrami.
Give it a shot.
But I do want to get on the Empire Classic. Obviously, Louisville opens with Texas. Not gonna lie, I look at those two games Sunday, and I think like if you're a betting man, which I'm sure a lot of people that listen to this podcast are, I think you can make a pretty good amount of money from parlaying Texas against the spread and UConn. No matter what the spreads are on those two games, I think Texas and UConn just got to roll those two games because we've obviously hit on Louisville's issues. Indiana has really, really struggled as well. So I want to ask you quickly about Texas, but then I want to kind of talk about a theoretical Louisville-Indiana matchup because I'll be honest, I would be absolutely stunned if we don't get that matchup on Monday. Texas, obviously, they bring in Max Asmus. They bring back Tyrese Hunter. They got Dylan Dessou, Dylan Mitchell, all these guys. They're not a great shooting team, but they are uber athletic. And I look at Louisville and I go, can they match their athleticism and can they play discipline enough to keep Texas from getting to the rim and crashing the offensive glass whenever they want?
Right. Yeah. I wish I could tell you that, Louisville's going to be able to stop that, but the amount of blow-bys that have occurred, I mean, they're averaging about 14 and a half blow-bys per game. Louisville right now in their first four against teams that are not as quick and as athletic as the guys you just mentioned for Texas. So even regardless of shooting, when you can get open shots because they're creating, you talked about Louisville collapsing. I mean, Texas is going to probably be able to get any shot they want. And when bodies come off bodies, which is what happens when you're trying to come over and block a shot, like an Evans or a Huntley Hatfield, then you open up offensive rebound opportunities for Texas is big. So, yeah, it's a daunting task for Louisville to go in there. And even Texas defensively, look, we know Rodney Terry's going to have his teams guarding really hard.
They get into you.
That's another factor. So will Louisville be able to get into stuff? How quickly they can get into stuff? Are they going to take bad shots, which can lead to easy opportunities for Texas? So yeah, they've got their work cut out for them for sure.
With that ball pressure too, it's going to be really tough for Louisville to take care of the ball, and a team that's already really struggled with turnovers. It's how can you?
They haven't seen that yet. Yeah. They haven't seen that type of pressure that they're going to see on Sunday. This year, obviously, the teams that are playing them are kind of giving room. And we talked about going under ball screens. Texas isn't going to do that. They might blitz. They might hard hedge. They're going to show them recover. And their guys are going to be all over the place. So there's going to be a lot of active guys with length. So yeah, you've got to really shore up some of the things you want to do offensively and ways to attack Texas.
Yeah, and Texas is a team that, other than Asmus, has that core group of guys has been around for a couple years now, to where they're going to know. Yep. They're going to know, even if they hard hedge, you can be like, oh yeah, no, you'll get Devin Savage rolling to the rim. No, they're going to rotate, and then they're going to rotate again on the back end to be able to close out on a shooter, to where it's going to be.
And that's the other thing too. Yeah, like Louisville's, like their roles, and that's another point that I've got. They've got to roll hard, because it's not usually, you're not going to be able to hit the roller a lot of times. It's the lift guy. It's the opposite guy that you're going to hit, because guys have to tag. And Louisville's got to do a much better job if they're going to run those ball screens of guys not just popping, rolling hard, because it's amazing what you can accomplish when you don't care who gets the credit. If guys can roll hard, you hit the lift, you can get easy shots, one extra pass. And that's something that, like, Texas is just not going to allow.
Yeah, and if they do indeed fall to Texas and UConn does take care of Indiana, that sets up a matchup that, honestly, I think is a lot more intriguing than what I would have thought about a week ago, because I didn't have high expectations for Indiana. I thought they'd be, fine, but they show a lot of the same issues Louisville does. We talked about earlier, a lot of threes don't come off of just, you leave a dude wide open on the wing and it's one pass and a three. Indiana gives up a lot of wide open threes where it's just one pass and a three and someone gets lost defensively. Like it's, I don't know, Coach, how much you've watched of them. It is alarmingly bad how they defend the perimeter and how many offensive rebounds they give up on the defensive end. And on the other end, they really struggle to take care of the ball. They don't really have a identity on the offensive end either, to where they've made plays in their first two games to beat Florida Gulf Coast and Army to kind of pull away late, just because, Xavier Johnson's a good point guard. Khalil Ware, they haven't faced anyone that's big enough to really have a chance to defend him or Malik Renew yet. But Indiana is in a very, very tough spot, to where, from game one to game two, they play a worse opponent in Army, and they didn't improve on anything they needed to improve on from the Florida Gulf Coast game. So I'm not exactly ringing alarm bells yet, because Indiana brought in 10 new guys. They're obviously figuring a lot out, especially on the offensive end. But the thought process was, okay, you need to figure out a bunch of stuff with the new guys. Guys, the offense is going to be a work in progress. You're going to be able, though, to have long, lanky, athletic guys on the defensive end where you can suffocate teams. So far, that hasn't been the case. Army against Stonehill College and Marist didn't score more than 55 points in either game. And Indiana lets them hit, I think, 12 threes on Thursday night. And a lot of them either, again, just simple miscommunications. Malik Renew or Mackenzie Mbako just leave a dude wide open. Or, we talk about ball screen defense. Indiana doesn't know what it's doing defending the ball screen right now. I mean, Xavier Johnson will go under, but Ware or Renew don't hedge out to cover a screen. They just leave dudes wide open routinely, and they don't clean up the defensive glass either. To where I think Louisville, not that I think Louisville's going to win the game, but I don't think it's going to be the same type of game to where, Louisville played a Texas Tech team in Maui last year that ended up finishing dead last in the Big 12, and they lost like 72-38. I don't think it's going to be that type of game either, because I think Louisville's going to get a lot of open looks. They're going to get a lot of offensive rebound chances, which if there's one thing Louisville's done well over the course of 2 games, I would argue it's that they've crashed the offensive glass fairly consistently. They've done a decent job of that. And on the other end, then the one thing that Louisville's kind of done defensively is be able to force turnovers, and Indiana is very carefree with the basketball. So I look at those 3 things. If Louisville's able to hit 3-pointers, which we don't know if they can do that, but if they can, I truly think they can keep things interesting on Monday against Indiana. I don't think they'll be able to win the game, because at the end of the day, I think, Indiana has more talent on the roster. They're better coached than Louisville, but I think Louisville can make it interesting on Monday. That's not something I thought I would be saying a week ago.
Yeah. I also think Indiana, you might be a little surprised how they come out against Connecticut. I mean, that's going to be something where those guys are jacked up. You go through the Florida Gulf Coast, they're a talented team. And yeah, you talked about some of their shortcomings on the defensive end and some of the things that they're doing, but they do have talent. And I think they'll give Connecticut a little better game than people expect. But then again, Monday, it'll be just fascinating to see which team shores up some of the problems that they have and are more consistent. Yeah, because right now both teams are struggling with just conceptually understanding what they want to do. I still think that IU's got a chance to battle Connecticut. I think Connecticut will come away with that one. And then Monday, look, you only have a day prep too, so it's not like you have a lot of time to. You're really prepping for Texas when you're Louisville. You're prepping for Connecticut when you're IU. You have somebody on your staff that's looking at Louisville from the Indiana end and vice versa. But you're not going to be as familiar. So basically, you have to have great concepts. And if you're not consistent with what you do, then you can really, really struggle. And that game could look really messy if that's the case.
It really could, because those are 2 teams that don't shoot the ball great, don't take care of the ball great, leave dudes wide open on the perimeter, and don't clean up the defensive glass. That's 4 pretty keys for a pretty ugly game on Monday, which is, something pretty sad for 2 programs that are traditionally probably, 2 of the top 7, 8, 9, 10 programs in the sport. But I think, with Florida Gulf Coast is one thing. Like, that's a team picked to win their league. They're legit, kind of like Chattanooga or like James Madison beat Michigan State. That they're a legitimate major team. Army 338th and Ken Palm, they lost by double digits to Marist and Stonehill. Like, that's a little bit more. Again, long season, all that stuff, but maybe a little more troublesome to where if you're on the Louisville end, though, you can say, okay, maybe that's a chance to be able to compete a little bit more than what you thought. Obviously, still another week to go there, so both teams have chances to improve. All right. I know we got to get going here, Coach. Appreciate the time. As always, we'll do this again next week. Hopefully you get out to New York, because I know that would be.
Hopefully I'm getting a slice. Hopefully I'm getting a nice hot pastrami. That's the goal in the Dr. Brown's. That's the goal, Jack.
Absolutely. That's the absolute dream. So we'll be back next week here, Thanksgiving week edition here on Floyd Street's Finest. For Coach Mark Lieberman, I'm Jack